Eurocentric beauty standards.
That I would never be loved in high school because of the way I look.
Do with society's growingly unattainable expectations.
Seeing the photos where Kendall's hair appears to be styled like an afro.
Kim has been accused of cultural appropriation again.
It's great. I love braids.
Right?
I think everybody should have braids.
It's a beautiful fashion choice.
Yeah, but I think we're going too far with that.
What do you think?
Fat phobia and race are very interlinked with one another, especially because fat phobia has racial origin.
Develop like this whole concept about, is it an outfit or is she just skinny?
Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well, and today I've come to bring the topic up to the surface about black and brown bodies and how they have been portrayed in society. Most people of color have had a long time battle with their hair. Self-loathing, societal pressure, intense dismay regarding their bodies. The question arises, why do they feel this way about themselves, and how can we trace it back to the roots of racism, fat phobia, and fearing black and brown bodies? I chose the topic of anthropology because I think about this a lot, like how humans and their roots are just so connected, but because of modern times and us being in this rat race all the time, we don't really think about it and we take it for granted. And I just wanted to bring this issue into light because not a lot of people talk about it. Although there is more light put on it now rather than back in, say, the 20th century, it should be more talked about. Now let's focus on the question, why do black and brown people, why do many of them, feel this way about their hair? Unfortunately, it just traces back to the slave trade, where when Europeans came to Africa to round up slaves, to bring them back to their countries, to do labor work, cheap labor work, and when the Europeans arrived, they saw that African people had very different, distinct features that had never been seen in Europe, and they regarded these features as ugly because they saw themselves as more than these slaves. And just because of this simple thought process, it's all brought us back to Eurocentricity and the romanticization of Eurocentricity. Eurocentric beauty is essentially just the idea that a lot of people should fit into this one little box when many of them have different body types and that should be accepted. But this isn't all Eurocentricity is about. It's a very specific body type and idealization. It's the big blue eyes, the small nose, the thin figure. Another thing that greatly plays into Eurocentricity is the long, straight hair. The thin hair and the silkiness of it. And so when these colonists arrived to Africa, they saw the curly textures of hair and they just saw it as so different from what they'd normally see that they viewed it as a bad thing. So that's how many of our beauty standards arise, in that way of people viewing something as incorrect or bad just because it was different to them. You can even see examples of like internalized Eurocentricity in things like modeling. Like, for example, a runway model. You can just see how like conforming their body types are. It's a terrible thing to say, but really their body types are just like the ideal body type to a lot of people, and they just like completely throw all the other possible like model body types out the window because there is this very, like I said before, internalized beauty standard of Eurocentricity. For example, if we look at the measurements of a runway model, you can see that the hips and the waist are both like very similar in size, and they're both very small. This very dainty figure that is considered beautiful. This body type has been glorified for centuries, and we just can't seem to get hooked off of the idea that the Eurocentric body type and look is the best thing. And we've just seen this in, like I said before, modeling. You can see it in TV, you could see it in like just so many things, and you can just see how rooted it is in our society. And even if you want to admit it or not, it's there. But you might say, it's best not to think about that and see how we can improve the future with different looks when it comes to models or just different representation in TV, in art. But truly, it's so, like, we have to face the past before we move on to the present, and that's why this issue needs to be talked about in the first place. Because so many people just, they think that predominantly, oh, it's okay, like, we just have to move on from that, and we do have to move on from that, but we have to talk about it first, and come to common understanding that, yes, this happened, and yes, we will continue to move forward. So now that we've gotten to essentially the root of the question, let's move on to something more close to our modern times. The development of, now we're getting into the development of hair and self-loathing in that aspect, but also how it helped a lot of people to feel empowered during the civil rights movement. And that's why we're going to be speaking about the afro. Before segregation was ended in 1957, there were, in modern America, segregated areas where only the black and brown kids could go to this school and the white kids could go to this school, and only if you were black then you'd have to drink from this water fountain. If you were white you had to drink from this one. And during that time, people's rights, mainly people of color's rights, were violated completely. That's how the civil rights movement rose up, and that's how people started claiming their rights. And you could see this through fashion, movements, and very predominantly through hair. That's why we're going to be bringing up the topic of the afro. You can see the afro in modern styles even now. People are sporting it, they're on their everyday, people just have it naturally. But back then it was a statement when it comes to demanding your rights as a person and showing that you are not part of this standard. It was a way to show that hair was beautiful even if it was quote-unquote untamed. So many people would come to work, come on the bus, and just boycott a lot of things while with their afros, and that was a big part of the movement, showing this representation through hair, which is a big part of black and brown culture. Many black activists sported the afro, such as Angela Davis, pictured here, that fought for the rights that we have today. And it's really just crazy to think that so many things wouldn't have been able to be done without these people coming out of their comfort zones and showing their natural hair to ward off white supremacy. I remember back in the early 2000s to like the 2010s, body types were really different from nowadays. And if you've been on the internet a lot, or you're part of the Gen Z community, you have probably heard the term slim thick or heroin chic been thrown around. And I just wanted to talk about these two very distinct, different body types and make essentially like sort of an analyzation and like Venn diagram about them, because they are so different, and it's just crazy how much our view has changed from the early 2000s to now the early 2020. So back in the early 2000s, the body type that everyone was looking for and that everyone wanted was the heroin chic body type. And it's not correct to say everyone wanted it, because a lot of people might have not had that view, but it was very, very desirable at that time, because this was depicted, like I said again, in modeling, TV, art, in so many mediums that were shown to the public. And this body type, to describe it shortly, it's like very, very thin. It's called heroin chic because it resembles how many heroin addicts looked when they were using heroin during this like very strongly opiate time in our history. And you can just see very thin features, like thin arms, thin legs, thigh gaps, very small chests. A lot of times ribs were showing in many cases, but now we can just see how unhealthy it was to want that body type. If you have it naturally, that's one thing, but for a lot of people who didn't have that body type, it was really detrimenting to them because it was portrayed in the media as such a good thing so often that they just wanted it so bad. But it's really hard to get there. Since the early 2000s, the ideal body type has completely changed. As I mentioned before, the new body type that has risen as, like, ideal, I guess, ideal? It's not a great way to put it, but as desirable is the slim thick body type. And also to describe the slim thick body type, it's basically an hourglass figure, like a very, very large chested, small waist, bigger hips, thick thighs. A lot of people who have, like, made this body type, you know, desirable and, like, have put it out into the media, there's a lot of people that have been doing that, but a person that predominantly, like, shook the internet was Kim Kardashian. Kim Kardashian and her sisters, since the start of Keeping Up with the Kardashians, have been culturally appropriating at any chance they got. Kim Kardashian and her sisters have appropriated black culture so much to the point that many people even question their races anymore. Like, for a long time, I just viewed Kim Kardashian as a black woman, and I didn't see any problem with her. And then I actually did some research and I thought about it for a second, and I realized that she's white. And the confusion that this has brought on is just simple things like over-tanning your skin and lip fillers and reconstructive surgery to have a smaller waist and wider hips or a bigger chest. And even if people call this the slim thick body type, it's really just a black woman's body type in a lot of cases. Not every black woman has this body type, but there are many African traits involved in this body type. Another way the slim thick body type is portrayed in the media is through Instagram models. I mean, through social media models have always portrayed the it girl type of vibe when it comes to their body types, the things they own, how many followers they have. And so with certain body types being portrayed through that it girl view, they gain popularity, especially since they're on social media. And although both of these bodies are beautiful, it's really hard to achieve this look, like, when it comes to both of them. Like, when it comes to the slim thick body type, you can either be born with it or you have to go through surgery or a lot of exercise to reach your result. And with the heroin chic body type, a lot of people go to, like, very harsh lengths to get there, which can often not very healthy. And it's crazy to think that black and brown women have been marginalized so much to the point that their hair and their bodies are just colonized. There are so many variations of this shown everywhere. In reality, it's true what's going on. And it's just a shame that people would rather see a white woman trying to be black than an actual black woman. And when these black women try to speak up and talk about their bodies, they become over-sexualized because of this media stream and the colonization of just what they look like. I wanted to get more of an inside view of how society affects people with curly hair of the African diaspora. So I went into my community and I interviewed two people, one that has pursued a career in curly hair and one that has had a long time adjusting to their view of themselves with curly hair. I didn't end up having enough time to interview the other person I was planning on interviewing, so I just interviewed one. I decided to focus on Mikes, the manager and owner of Mika's Hair Salon. Compiled my 4 most impactful questions that I saw from the interview to display in the video. First, I asked Mika's why she chose this job, and she said that in a lot of cases there aren't many natural hair salons. That's why something like this was a priority, especially in her community. The second question I asked her was, for how long have you wanted to start the salon? And she answered with, she had a product released in early 2020, and then from there she got the idea to open a whole salon. My third question was, what do you recommend to the people that are still adapting to their natural hair? And she answered with, hair is free, but curly hair specifically needs more work than straight hair. That's why caring for our curly hair just shows how self-care can influence our mental health and well-being. For my fourth and final question, I asked her if there was a specific hair type that she received with customers in the salon, and she said yes, the specific hair type is the number 3 hair texture, and that she has a friend that also has a salon, but she mainly gets the number 4 texture, but she predominantly gets 3. With that, thank you for listening to my project.